Hi, you're listening to What's Next with Emma Arnold. I'm your host, Emma Arnold. And this week we have a very special guest. She is one of my favorite people in the world. She's from Portland, originally lives in LA now, just an amazing comedian. And she has an amazing podcast that we did right after we did my podcast, which I'm going to suggest you listen to. It's called You Can Do It with Bri Pruett. Our guest was Bri Pruett this week, and she was phenomenal. We in her podcast, I really, really suggest you listen to it. It was very fun because we had already bonded during this podcast, and then when we did hers, we were already deep in. We were already into the thick of it. And she gives pep talks to people, and she gave me just a beautiful pep talk about I had been feeling nervous about getting back into comedy and sort of going back into normal life after COVID, and she was very helpful and so encouraging and lovely. I feel much better about getting into comedy, less good about getting back into normal life after I'm fully vaccinated now. And last week, for the first time in almost a year, I went inside a grocery store. Not just, usually I just do the pickup outside. The lovely people at Fred Meyer just bring out your groceries to your car, which has been very safe and great during COVID, and I appreciate that. But I actually went into a store for the first time in a year, and not like riding a bike, turns out, the etiquette for that. I did not remember cart etiquette. I right away walked in, bumped into somebody with a cart, went around a corner too fast, hit another cart. Couldn't remember, you're trying to remember your 6 feet rule, but also, somebody standing right in front of the Rice Krispies. And it was quite an adventure, which was sort of funny because afterward, I've never liked grocery shopping. I hate grocery shopping. I get into a store and my dissociative disorder just goes off the chart, and I just end up wandering around, lost for about an hour, confused usually. And then I leave with 6 things, and all of them papayas. And this time, after we left the store, I told Alex, I was like, that was so exhilarating. What a fun time. And I felt like it was so exciting. After that, I was like, I just don't feel like it's going to be kind of a slow curve into getting back into usual life. I didn't go straight from the grocery store into being like, yeah, I'm ready to headline a show. Just the idea of, I'm still pretty aware of whether or not people are wearing masks, and, you're looking around to see if anybody's coughing and stuff. And that's fully vaccinated. That's me fully vaccinated. I'm still kind of just a little, not even nervous for myself, just nervous for society since we've lost 500,000 people, just kind of how's everybody doing? So it'll be a while before I just feel like sitting in the dark and basement making 200 people breathe out of their mouth as hard as they possibly can. I don't know. I'm a ways away from wanting to do that. I am excited. People have been asking when I plan to tour again. My thought is, I don't think I'm going to tour till more people are vaccinated, including my own family. But my oldest got his first vaccine. He's almost 18, so he was able to get one. My middle kid is going to get one at the end of the month, and youngest kid, we'll see. I'm hoping they open up the vaccines to 12 to 15. That would be a relief. So my plan, we'll see where things are at with everything COVID-wise. But I'm hoping to tour again in the fall. And this summer I'm going to do some outside shows, maybe in Portland and some drivable cities. I think that would be fun. And I might do a backyard show here in Boise, film it maybe so that the people out of town who've been so supportive can watch me eat shit, most likely for the first time on stage. We'll see. I just got done doing another podcast and telling someone very confidently that I didn't feel like I was going to be rusty after all of this. And as I was saying it, I'm like, every time you have that kind of confidence, you fall flat on your face, Arnold. So why are you doing that to yourself? So we'll see. Just a little catch up as to where we're at. We'll talk a few things, and then you can get into listening to Bri. I like this. I like the new way we're doing the podcast. I like chatting with you a little beforehand, and then you can get into it with Bri. But it's nice. I've always meant to do kind of a little where am I at? What am I doing type thing. Things are pretty good over here. Nothing, nothing new, nothing exciting. I have been just mostly doing a lot of online school with the kids. A couple of them are doing pretty well. One of them wants to do it again next year, loves it. And one of them says it's fine, is getting good grades, but is missing his friends. And one of them is really struggling. And we spend most of the day with him sliding out of his chair a whole bunch of times, and me just begging him to do anything. And he's got a real gift for turning a few minutes of work into a full-time job. So we've been trying to work with him. Today was a little bumpy. It's funny because a lot of times his teachers have told me like, oh, he's a great kid. He's so funny, really likable. Love to have him in class. Never listens to a thing. Yeah, does not pay any attention during class, does not turn in any other work, but he usually slides by with a B or a C because I think he's able to charm his way through, and he hasn't been able to do that during online school. They're just only looking at the work, and he is struggling. So we sat there today with him, and we read the first chapter of Call of the Wild, and we did a quiz on that, and we wrote an essay, and he was pretty annoyed with me a few times. It was funny. I tweeted that I think a lot of times people think I'm just like, people always be like, you're such an amazing mom. And I am a good mom. I'm a good mom. But people, I think you kind of get this social media veneer of like that I'm perfect or something. But today when we were sitting there, he was having a fairly strong testosterone teenager puberty moment. And he was just like, I don't need you to sit by me. I don't need you to sit by me, which day after day he has proven is not true because he will sit there for 4 hours and not have done any work. And his teacher had told me, hey, he has not been to class in several days. And I was like, how is that possible? He's sitting at the table on his computer. So he wasn't even logging on to class, even though he was sitting there. So I was like, okay, I'm going to sit here with you and make sure you're staying on task. And he was so mad at me and so annoyed. And he kept being like, leave, just go. I don't know why you're here. You're making me so mad. Just go. Just get out of here. I don't need to be babysat. And I was like, dude, this is not where I want to be. It's not like this is how I was like, oh, I hope on a Wednesday I get to sit next to you and learn more about Jack London. I don't care about this book, and I didn't want to read it in 7th grade, and now I have to read it again. It's not ideal for me either. The ideal situation is you do all this shit and I never even know about it, but here we are. And he was so mad at me, and I tweeted that I really took everything in my parental patience to not just discus throw him into the sun, because he was really pushing my buttons today. But here's the thing with teenagers. I think that I don't know, maybe there are a bunch of parenting classes and stuff on this, but nobody ever gave me the advice. I just sort of learned it from this being my third one. Is I think with teenagers, my kids went through two separate, very hard stages. The people say terrible twos. No, it was the age of 3 and the ages 12 to 14, 3 to 4 and 12 to 14. All three of my kids have been very difficult during that age. And I think sometimes as a parent, like there's this expectation that you're supposed to do a whole bunch of things when really what you have to do is wait it out. Like your job is to just wait it out and to not take it personally. And especially when you have a teenager who is mad at you or calling you names or whatever. I mean, you have to I try to keep a certain level of expected respect, obviously, but you just kind of have to at the same time, like, wait it out. And that's what I did today. He was so mad, and I just sat there and kind of kept going like, well, I hear you, but this is what we're doing anyway. And 2 hours later, he was laughing and joking around and in a great mood, and whatever little testosterone fit that had hit him had passed. And I think, I have a lot of friends who are just now having babies, and a lot of friends who have littles through all of this. And that would be my advice to you as a parent is like, a friend of mine who just had a baby, she was texting me. She's all frantic and worried because, her midwife told her, oh, you have to do bonding time. You have to do latching time. You have to do skin to skin waking, skin to skin asleep skin to skin, like with dad skin to skin, is asleep with dad, and like otherwise your baby won't bond with you. And that is ridiculous because our entire evolution is set up that your baby bonds with you because it will die if it does not, and you will bond with your baby because it will die if you do not. And so the whole thing is set up so that you just naturally bond with your baby. You don't have to work at it. You're gonna bond with that thing, whether you want to or not. That's how later, 13 years later, when they're sitting at the table telling you how dumb and old and boring you are, you can just be like, that's cool, man. Finish your reading assignment and not throw them into the street. And I think also I always try to remember with teenagers that, like with my kids, okay, don't tell them this, please. But I always figure part of being a teenager is it's like the bonding and latching thing. It's a natural part of being a teenager that they're supposed to rebel against you. They're supposed to push back. They're supposed to push further away because they're about to leave your house. It's good for both of you. They're supposed to like create friction between you to some degree so that you're both like, all right, fucker, get out of here. But at the same time, they're like trying things on. They're trying on different personalities. They're trying on different people. They're like, maybe I'm going to be a sexist jock. And then they'll do that for a little bit. And you kind of just have to be like, I don't like this, but also, they're already people. You can't make them be anything. So with my kids, I've always tried, when they're doing stuff that I don't like, I just try to model back the behavior I hope they grow into without really doing a whole lot of commentary on what they're currently doing. Obviously certain things will push that line and I'll be like, hey, knock it off. But I feel like there's a lot of times in life where you can get further by just being like, well, I'm going to model the right behavior here with this kid. And hopefully they come around to eventually realizing like that right there is what I want to be. That's the person I want to be. So I've been doing my best with that. All of which is to say I really miss them being in school. I do. As much as I will say we've all bonded and it's been a very sweet year. We've spent tons of time together and we've had a lot of fun playing board games. And I don't know if you're follow me on Instagram, you probably saw the amazing prank that they pulled today. It was very, very fun with Blue Boy. They're a lot of fun and I've enjoyed this extra year of special time with them for sure. But I do miss them like having their own lives and, hanging out with friends and, being out of the house and stuff. And there's just a big, in the Idaho legislature, which has been an absolute mess, they voted down a pay increase. They voted for it, but it was by one vote. But the lieutenant governor tweeted out that she was trying to get the Senate to not pass this pay increase for teachers in Idaho, which is wild to me because this year has been so hard on teachers. Like this morning, poor Arthur's English teacher, he starts every day by playing a song on the guitar and singing along with the kids. And he does all these really fun and interesting assignments. And he tries so hard to get the kids engaged. And this morning he was like talking to everybody, trying to get them to talk about the book they're reading. And he was like, hey, is anybody awake out there? Is anybody a single person? Nobody's responding. Like nobody's cameras on. It's the first class of the day. And he's just like, come on, somebody respond. I'm begging you. So I feel like teachers have had so much extra work. I've talked to friends who are teachers who are like, oh yeah, I had to drive to a student's house to drop off this thing because their family doesn't have a printer. I feel like teachers have gone above and beyond. I always think teachers should get paid more. Always, always, always. But especially this year. And the fact that our lieutenant governor, she doesn't want our teachers to get paid more because she's extremely paranoid that the Idaho teachers are going to start teaching critical race theory. I don't know what their pay has to do with that, but she doesn't want to pay them more in case they all start teaching critical race theory. And that's how racist it is here is they don't even want people to know about racism or sexism or anything. So I was pretty frustrated about that this morning, having, sitting with my own almost 13-year-old I can't imagine how a teacher gets, 35 kids to hand in paperwork and to give a shit about Call of the Wild, which is, by the way, oh my God, what a brutal book. It's funny because it's one of those, you're like, it's an allegory. And you're like, yeah, I got it. It's still a really rough book for kids to be reading. Not that I'm saying censor it. I'm just saying, Jesus Christ, that poor dog. I didn't remember all that from the 7th grade myself. So yeah, homeschool has been a bit much lately. The only real like true bright spot in my week. It's been a rough week. I'll be honest with you. We've had a bit of a rough week. Some real ups and downs emotionally. Some arguments. Some working through some things. I feel like with the weather getting nicer, everybody's kind of ready to like get back out there, but there's nowhere to go really quite yet. And nobody's really like, we all feel antsy, but also not sure where to take the ants. So it's been a little rough. We had a rough week, but at the same time, we did start watching the X-Files again, which I have rewatched a couple times in my adult life. I was obsessed with the X-Files as a kid, obsessed. I wasn't allowed to watch TV, so I'd go to friends' houses to watch it. My favorite show. I was so into it. I've watched it a couple times as an adult. I'm always amazed by how well it holds up. We started watching it because we tried to watch on Netflix a show called Black Spot, which I came across. It looked spooky. It's French. It looked like it would be kind of fun and supernatural. It had good reviews. It had an 86% on Rotten Tomatoes. I thought, oh, perfect. We watched one episode and it was really bad. It was very, very bad. Also, I'm enough of an X-Files fan that I was like, this episode, the first episode of Black Spot, is a total ripoff of the first episode of the X-Files, but done much worse. Much, much worse. And obviously some parallels, like the reviews I had read had said like, oh, it's like a French Twin Peaks, or like a French X-Files. But one review later that I read after, because I went back and reread the reviews because I was like, how was I so off about being excited about this show? One review said, I loved this. This was like the X-Files, but without any supernatural bullshit. And I was like, what's wrong with you? What kind of person are you that you wanted the X-Files, but with just murder? You wanted just like a crime drama? Did not care for Black Spot at all. It was very disjointed and a bit of a mess. And this is funny. I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, and we'll get back to the X-Files in just a second. But I've been wanting to talk about this certain thing that's been bugging me for a while because if you know me, I have pretty strong opinions on movies and television. And when a certain show starring a certain Jason Sudeikis came out, I wasn't crazy about it. Everybody else said that they loved it. I watched 4 episodes. It did not click with me. I was like, why did you guys recommend this show to me? I feel like you should know me well enough to know I would hate it. Everybody was like, you have to watch the full season to get it, which I hate when people say, because that is wild to expect someone to watch a full season of television before liking it. I didn't hate it. I just didn't like it, okay? It just wasn't my favorite thing. It's funny, I'd tell you the name of it, can't remember. I just know it was the soccer show with Jason Sudeikis. I'm not ever going to like a sports show about a man who wasn't very good at a thing getting a job, okay? It's just not going to happen. Someone on the Patreon said that I should start a new Patreon subscriber level, a tier that was... if enough people subscribe to it, I will finish the show, which maybe isn't a bad idea. Maybe we'll do that. But everybody was so mad at me. I got so many messages from people who were mad that I didn't like it. But more than that, mad that I said I didn't like it. And recently I've seen on Twitter a whole bunch the same tweet kind of over and over, like what happens, which is like, hey, you can dislike a thing and just keep your mouth shut. You don't ever have to say you dislike it. And I just want to say that goes contrary to everything I am as a person. Okay. First of all, I like disliking a thing. Okay. I like complaining. Okay. I like watching a thing and then being like, that wasn't it. I didn't care for it. I also like liking a thing just as much. I like liking a thing and I love being like, that was amazing. I want that every day, all day. That was perfect. I feel like I'm just as generous with my praise as I am my critiques. And I feel like part of the fun of culture and art and pop culture is discussing it. And I feel like somewhere along the line, we've forgotten that like part of the fun of watching a movie is walking out of the movie, and like when I saw the movie Signs, I saw it in a big group of people, and we walked out. I hated it. I thought it was one of the worst movies I'd ever seen. I was infuriated by it. And we walked out, and one of the people in the group turned to us and was like, well, that was the best movie I've ever seen. And we went afterward and we got food and we argued for like 2 hours over the merits or, the critiques of with like the merits or the flaws of that movie. And it was fun. Like, I enjoy that. I love discussing that stuff. And I also think like you can also, if I can shut up about not liking something, you can still like it if I don't like it. Like, you will live through that. Like, are you so fragile in your conviction of a thing as if you're like, I loved the show and I'm like, I didn't like it. It never clicked with me that you have to be like mad at me. I love when someone doesn't like a thing I like because I want to know. And a lot of times, like, I think there's a difference to me between sometimes you'll watch something and you're like, this was poorly made versus this had choices made by the people who made it that I disagree with. I think all of that stuff is fascinating. Like, was it bad because it was poorly done? Were there mistakes made? Were there plot holes, or was it strictly like, no, the director wanted to do that, they committed to that, and like some people will like that and some people won't. I'm fine if you're like, oh, I hate your comedy. I don't care. That's fine. If you're like, I hate your podcast, I hate you. That's fine. I don't care. That's like your right as the person who consumes art. And there have been times, honestly, I've always been a person who loves critique. You don't feel like you need to send me yours. I'm saying people who professionally critique. Like, years ago, I got a negative review by somebody who I was like, he makes some strong points, actually. He makes some strong points. And his reason for not liking my album, I was like, yeah, I don't like parts of it for that exact same reason. I mean, there were other ones that were like, abortion isn't an interesting topic and has no political importance in society anymore, and we don't need to keep talking about it. That was a stupid review, and that guy's stupid. But certainly I've gotten reviews where I've thought, yeah, that person's right. I could have done more of that, or I could have done less of that. So I don't know. If you're a person who, like, you only want to hear art praised, you're a fool. That's how bad art gets made. I can tell you, I live in Boise, Idaho. And part of the reason so much of our arts community has been trash for so long is because it's a town where you're not allowed to critique anyone. Anytime you go to a play, you have to be like, I loved it. It was perfect. Or it's such a small town. Everybody will be furious at you and think you're a total bitch. But if you can't even be like, I don't know, seemed kind of sexist to me. That's how better art gets made, is being able to be like, I didn't like that. Here's why. And then the artist is able to go, oh, I'm disregarding that, or, oh, that should help me grow as an artist. So all of that is to say, if you want to get me to watch that Jason Sudeikis soccer show, pay me money and I will professionally review it for you. But back to X-Files. Love that show. Love it. Been watching it with Alex, and Arthur's been watching it a little bit with us, and it's been super sweet. And there's so much to love. There's so much to love about it. Just in rewatching it, it holds up so well. Even when it's cheesy, it's fun cheesy. It leans into it. It knows what it's doing. I love that they're just pass off Vancouver. Vancouver is anywhere else. It's filmed in British Columbia, and there's in the first season an episode that I really like where they're like, we're in Iowa, and it's like these giant mountains covered in pine trees, and you're like, that is definitely not Iowa, but they just don't care. They're always just like, wow, very, very cold in Arizona. You can see everyone's breath, it's just, I love it. I love that. Arthur had never watched it before. When the last time I rewatched it with the big boys, he said it was too spooky. He didn't like it, but now he's at the age, he's 13. He's starting to get into spooky stuff. So he's been watching it with us. And the first episode that he watched, he came in and he sat down and Mulder was on screen, and he goes, Jesus Christ, who's that? And we were like, that's Fox Mulder. He's one of the main characters, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, holy shit, is he handsome? That jaw could cut a diamond. My God. And then now he's been watching because Fox Mulder is so hot. It's funny. David Duchovny's fine. He's fine. He's attractive. It's definitely Dana Scully for me. She is just Babe City. I just think she's so beautiful and just, it's funny. It's as I get older, it's interesting to me because maybe I've always kind of felt like this, but the older people get, the more attractive I find them. And I don't find first season Gillian Anderson all that attractive because she just looks like a dewy, plump baby to me. Like she's just got those like fat little lips and like little, dewdrops on her cheeks. And she just looks like a brand new fat little baby. And I just want to pinch her cheeks and I buy her a bagel. Like she's just so cute. She's just the cutest little thing. As she gets older, I start to find her more and more hot. But yeah, young people just are not hot to me for whatever reason. They just always look like little kids. I don't understand. I don't understand this wave of, not wave. I mean, I guess it's been happening for all of human history. I don't understand dating a teenager. I especially maybe don't understand. I've been teaching, I have teenagers and I've been teaching the boys and all their friends how to drive stick shift lately. And, man, it's just being around a bunch of teenagers. I don't understand how like Jerry Seinfeld or Chris D'Elia or any of those guys fuck a teenager. Like they're just such greasy idiots. Like they're like very cool and very sweet and fun, but like they're not sexual creatures to me at all. It just seems very, very strange. Other than, we're doing pretty good here. Alex got his first shot. The other boys got theirs. It's all really starting to happen. After this episode, the next episode is going to be Irene 2. I love her very much. You should give that a listen. That'll come out in a week. The podcast is going to start being pretty regular, folks. Prepare yourself for that. Alex, he finished his COVID job. He had a COVID. Sorry, I'm just fucking with my computer here right now because it's being a beast. There we go. He had a stay-at-home COVID safe job during the last year, which he finally was able to he's done with. He finished his last 2 weeks and, man, he was just the funniest little thing. I've very rarely given 2 weeks at a job. Okay. Some people will be like, oh, that fucks over your coworkers. It's not my fault. Don't be understaffed. That's not my issue. I've given 2 weeks when I liked a place and I've walked out of places with no notice whatsoever more than once in my time. Just was like, I'm not doing this anymore. Took off my apron and left. I have no problem just leaving a job if it's shitty or not showing up the next day and not calling. No problem doing that. Alex, on the other hand, where he's at emotionally with that is he didn't just work his full 2 weeks. His shift was 12 to 9. He worked all the way up until 9:40. He did 45 minutes of overtime because he was helping a customer on the phone who didn't speak great English, and he didn't want to pass him off to anybody because he was worried they wouldn't get good customer service. So he stayed on the line and helped this nice man. That's where he is. That's the kind of person he is. I'm not ever going to be like that, but it has been wonderful. He started his freelance business. He is a film editor by training, and he does wildland firefighting in the summers. Usually took last year off to be safe and to take care of us and to make sure we didn't get COVID. So that was very cool of him. So he gets to go back to his regular life, his pre-COVID life, and that's nice for everybody. And it's been nice having him around. He's just been kicking around here. Last week he was like, honestly, probably the first week in his adult life that he hasn't worked full time, at least in a very long time. And I know from experience that it takes a little getting used to. He just was so antsy last week, just like pacing around and like, what do I do? I should be doing something. And I was just like chill, take a week off. Like before you jump into your freelance stuff and get all that figured out, like you just take a week off and like play a video game, take a walk. I don't know, go jerk off or something. And he just like could not help himself. He was doing all these projects and getting everything going. And I was just like, man, you can just fuck off. So it'll take him a little time, I think, to settle into the self-employed lifestyle, which is a nice lifestyle. I enjoy it. Paychecks aren't that great usually, but it's a nice way to live. So I hope you aren't working hard out there. I hope that I hope that COVID has changed the way you engage with materialism and capitalism. I hope you realize that you don't know any employer anything, and that they're not your family. I walked out of a orientation once. I was a young person at an orientation, and we were watching a video, and they kept saying we were family, and I was like, I'm not doing this. You're not my family. I'm not putting up with this. I gotta go. So don't believe any of that shit. Don't believe the corporate, ways they rip you off and steal your time and your life and your energy. Buy less shit. Buy more shit used. Work less. That's my motto. Work less. No more grinding. I was grinding for quite a few years with comedy, and people have asked when I'm going to tour again and stuff. It'll be in the fall, but I will not be ever grinding again, because that almost killed me, and I don't really ever need to do it again, and didn't really make me any funnier. I feel like this last year, I haven't done any comedy, but I feel funnier. I feel like when it's time again, I'm gonna have I've written about a half hour of new jokes, which I think when I tag everything and get everything together, I probably have almost an hour, 45 minutes at least, which I'm excited to do for you guys. And I'm excited to see you, and I'm excited to see you on the road and have you take me to museums and take me to baseball games and show me your adorable town. I want to get back out there and do fun stuff, but I'm going to do it in a very leisurely, relaxed way. And I'm definitely never grinding again. So I hope this finds you relaxed. I hope it finds you, and it's a perfect actually way to introduce our guest this week, because Bri Pruett, she is just the queen of relaxation and self-care. She's so good at taking care of herself. She's always posting on her Instagram these beautiful meals she's making for herself, and these beautiful charcuterie plates I love that she does. And she's just so good at she's always been a role model of mine in comedy, for somebody who, she doesn't let other people tell her who she is. She doesn't let other people bring her down. She doesn't get involved in the bullshit scene drama of people just shit talking each other because they're jealous or because they're, crappy people. She really just is just such an amazing light of a person. And she's the kind of person when I think of her face, I immediately smile. She always just, she just exudes kindness and care and thoughtfulness, but also just power and sexiness. And she's so fucking funny. I really suggest you check out her comedy. She's just, she was definitely one of the people when I first started going to Portland, as a very young comic, and I would watch her, I would always be impressed and a little intimidated. And I always had a massive comedy crush on her. I just think she's so incredible. So I think you're going to enjoy this week's podcast episode. I don't know why I told you it was a podcast episode. You're here. You know why we're here. This week's episode, I hope you check out her podcast. You Can Do It with Bri Pruett. Follow her on Twitter, on Instagram. She's just so lovely. And take care of yourself. And I love you. Bye. Hi, everybody. This is Emma Arnold, and this is What's Next with Emma Arnold. And today I'm very excited. We have a very special guest. The Portland Mercury called her the beloved queen of warm-hearted truthiness, and I think that is so true. You can hear her on her own podcast. You Can Do It with Bri Pruett. Bri, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Emma. I'm so blessed to know you. I'm missing you in the Pando. I, treasure every rare social media appearance you make, because we can't count on it. You take the breaks.
I do.
Elusive. It makes me want more,
Oh, good. I'm glad. I always have this kind of worry of people are probably just nobody cares. Go if you're going to go. You don't need to make an announcement. But I do, because I have such little willpower that if I'm not you guys, I'm off Twitter. I need the accountability of being I'm off Twitter. So if you see me here, be aren't you off Twitter?
Oh, I see. We are
Yeah.
You have to make the announcement like I'm giving up smoking, so everyone
Yes.
tells you not to.
So that if I'm smoking, people are like, I thought you quit. And I'd be like, I did. And then I'd throw it away and be like, I'm sorry, I let everybody down. That's how I do accountability, is guilt.
Working through other people's expectations. Sure,
Yes.
sure,
Yeah.
sure, sure.
Yeah, totally. So, but I do, like, every time I go off social media, I'm it's like rough for a few days. And then I'm very quickly like, I never want to go back to that. Please don't make me go back. And then eventually, because I always am like, okay, March, I'm going to go back. Then as soon as I'm in it, I'm like, I love it here. And I'm on Twitter 7 hours a day. And I'm like, I'm never leaving. I'm all or nothing. And it's so frustrating.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Anything you can do to take good care of yourself, I applaud, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, I think it's a good, because I'm working on a couple fiction projects right now. I'm working on 2 scripts and like a little short children's short story thing about 2 cats that own a bookstore. That is just something fun I thought I would do during the pandemic. But I find if I'm on social media, that is where all of my creativity goes. All of it. And it's so, I wish that I was one of those people that could tweet and then also like work on stuff. But instead it's like, I have this little bucket of creativity for the day. And if I'm on social media a whole bunch, that's what I do with it. And
I think of it, it's funny you said bucket, because I was thinking about a bucket, and it's kind of like Plinko, that Price is Right game where you have all these buckets and you're putting the creativity in, but it doesn't always go where it's supposed to. You know what I mean? Like, if you spend so much time on a tweet, it's like, oh, damn, maybe that was like an hour-long pilot, actually.
Yeah.
But it killed on Twitter because it had the chops,
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't, sometimes I'll be like, well, that's okay. Because people, you don't get paid for it, but people follow you and then they find your stuff. But I don't think that's actually true, because I think for me what happens is people typically, from paying a little bit of attention, I've been like, people find me on YouTube or they find my albums through Spotify or whatever, and then they find my socials. I don't really think my socials are like broadening my base a whole lot.
I'll tell you what, though, in the Dream Factory down here in Hollywood, I think they do pay attention to that followership a little bit when they're giving out TV shows, because no one not famous gets eyeballs anymore, because of the way there's so many platforms and streaming platforms and channels.
Yeah. It's one of those, like, people are like, how many Twitch follows do you have? And I'm like, 75. Like, I just got on Twitch and like I use it mostly for Patreon stuff, but
you've always done this amazing job of shepherding your fans. And keeping that, and giving updates. And I love your beautiful Patreon options. And like, you got this feedback loop going. It's really inspirational to me.
Thank you. Yeah, I got really lucky. I had started the Patreon in the September before COVID started, just because I was releasing a chapter, or like whatever you want to call it, a book project that was supposed to end up being a live show, one chapter at a time. And then when COVID hit, it's paid my rent, because
amazing.
I've been so lucky.
What are the fans called? Are they honeybees?
Yeah, honeybees. Yeah.
That's so cute.
Yeah. And I set the whole thing up, like bee related, just because I thought it would be, it's like an easy way to do. But
I listen to these, I listen to some like culture podcasts that are always talking about like Mariah Carey has her lambs.
Oh yeah.
And Nikki, I forget what Nikki's fans are called. Barbs. They're called Barbs.
The Barbs. Oh, that's very cute. I do love that.
I call my listeners good and gentle listeners. I was thinking about maybe calling them chicken tenders, because they're very tender. I feel like we're a very tender community.
I love that. I love your fans as well. Like, I feel like we both got very lucky.
Hometown fandom. Yeah.
Well, and then you also do a good job of cultivating, like you said, gentle people, know?
Oh yeah. My audience is beautiful, but the Patreon game I'm working on. So
do it. Yeah.
Any fans,
I keep telling people, people have been like, I don't know. I don't have anything. And I, for a while, was doing gift baskets and little things for people, and like sending out like little things. And merch and stuff. And then I kind of asked people like, hey, what do you want? And they were like, oh, nothing. Please leave me alone. I just want to give you money. And I really think I subscribe to a few different, funny? Like I subscribe to Jackie and Lori and a few other people. And I'm the same way. I'm like, please don't I don't need anything. I just am here to support. I want to give you money. Right. So please don't give me anything back.
Patrons of the art. Yeah. It's an old time tradition.
Yeah. Yeah. Like one of I'm going to give him a shout out, Alexander, my best patron. Shout out to Alexander. He not only financially has he been a huge help this year, but honestly, I've felt this creative like emptiness a lot of times during this where I just feel like I don't know what to do with myself or what, but everything I share, I feel like he is there and he is like kind about it and excited, like whether it's my paintings or podcast or on Twitch or whatever, he's just been there. And he really is like he's a patron. Like I'm literally like, this guy is my like old school patron where he's paid my rent, but also he's made me feel like creatively worthwhile, in a lot of ways.
Alex,
and that's been nice. Yeah,
Alexander, we appreciate you.
Thank you, Honeybee. He's my favorite one. He's very sweet. But yeah, you should totally make a Patreon because I would subscribe to it. I would love to subscribe to it.
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah, definitely working on some. Yeah, because like I definitely have some buckets of content that are needing somewhere to go.
Yeah. Are you missing doing your show High Priestess?
So miss High Priestess. Yeah. Definitely miss my cannabis and tarot themed comedy show.
I never got to do it. And I'm so bummed. I want to be the first guest once it comes back.
I believe that live performance is indomitable. So, I think we will be back. And I also had a weekly show in LA, which, that was like my freaking workout room to, write jokes and come up with new material all the time. And now I kind of have the podcast for that. So that's been really, nice vessel. And then I've also got a writing group that I meet with weekly. So I've got some scripts coming out and trying to think of ways, to kind of produce that for the internet for people to enjoy when it's, a script. So maybe do some live readings and stuff coming up.
Oh, that's fun. I love that. Oh man, when I first started as a writer, when we moved back to Boise, I joined a writing group and it was hugely influential to me. Like I'm still friends with most of the people in there and not all of us went on to like become writers, but I just feel like for me, it was so formative to have a place every week I could go and just be like, nervously read the 3 pages that I wrote and have people like give really constructive criticism and just like, like really give you great feedback. You build such a good like not a shell because that sounds, but the ability to receive criticism is like huge as an artist.
I'm doing some spiritual work. I'm doing some shadow work with everybody else in the pandemic also. And I now feel I think writing is the most important thing that a human can do. Yeah. I never felt that way before because I'm kind of verbal, and I always thought that and I love therapy and like I always thought that talking was it. But now I think that writing is actually really important because you're like, there's this slowdown and this like translation of idea to form, and it's, I don't know, it's alchemy. There's something like kind of magic to it.
Yeah. After I went to treatment 4 years ago, that was one of the things they were like, you need to journal twice a day.
Right.
And it was so hard in the beginning when I first started. I was kind of just like, it was like a paragraph. But now, and I kept all my journals. Now I go through like one a month and I journal in the morning and at night, usually at least journal once a day, but not always twice. And it's so huge for me. And it became the book in a lot of ways because I just, so much of like what I was going to treatment for is so complicated. And talking about it, I could never quite pin it down. And I found like that I would write some of the same things over and over, like in rereading stuff. I would be like, yeah, clearly you just needed to like write this out until it really, I don't know. I used to like teach storytelling classes and I would always say like if you help somebody form a narrative around something, it's like the way you can heal from it. You need to be able to like sort of see the beginning, middle, end, and be able to see like, oh, this is how I was different after this, and this is the mistake I won't make again or whatever. But I guess I forgot to do that to myself for 2 decades.
And then speaking words aloud is also its own thing, which writers are like, oh, that sounds terrible. Like I would never do that. But we have this other practice, which is like my I work with this woman who's like a poet and like a magic class, but it's like it's part of your body speaking, so like loading ideas into your body is different than writing them out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that's, I've been writing a lot during the pandemic on and off. I'll take like a month where I don't write anything and then write like wild for a few days. But I feel like I really miss performing it. Like I really miss that next part of it, which is, like you said, the physical manifestation of all of these thoughts. Like, I also think for me, like, what I write ends up being a very different voice a lot of times than how I perform. I don't know. So I miss all of that. I miss it so much.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's jump in. I'm going to ask you some questions.
Okay.
So tell me, what's the closest you've ever come to dying? What's your closest near-death experience? I warned you about this question.
Yeah, you did, and I forgot about it because you know what I thought? Like nothing. I'm not a reckless person at all. I like drive very safely. I like don't drink alcohol. Like everything about my life is pretty safe. But I was suicidal.
Yeah.
So I will say, I guess my closest near-death experience is wishing I was not alive. And when I was a child, actually, taking some measures that I won't get into it because I think it will be triggering, but would not have been effective at ending my life, but I did not know that when I was a child. And had I made a slightly different decision, it could have, because medicine and alcohol is, when you mix things, it's like chemistry. It's who knows, But I definitely was not close, but the mindset of like being kind of like, this place sucks, I'm out of here, and being totally detached. That is the only kind of near-deathness in my existence.
How old were you?
I was 11.
That is such a classic suicide age. I feel like now that I've raised 3 kids through that age, I mean, I'm not speaking to your circumstance. Maybe you had, much more rough reasons than just the hormonal shift. And also like 11 is when I think you change from being a child into a young adult. And I watched all my kids go through a deep depression around the age of 11, just of like, and even my youngest just recently, it was, he's 12 now. So it was probably about a year ago, sort of articulated that of like, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm not like, he was like, I have to, like, now I have to grow up and now I can't, like, he was kind of, I think for him, like, he was the youngest. He was always so cute, and got all this attention. And then he was all of a sudden like, I'm not cute anymore. And he got like big boned and started to grow really fast. And like all 3 of my boys, I imagine this has to be something sort of really jarring for young men, is all my boys went from being kids to grown men in 2 years.
Fast. Yeah.
Like sick, from like a child's body to a men's. And women get breasts. Like all of a sudden it's like, you have boobs. Congratulations. But
well, most of us, but go on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I didn't till after I had kids, but but yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I think 11 is trauma. I'm a girl, so I was already, I was thinking about this recently though. Like I was pretty curvy early. I still am very flat, but I had tits, like I had ass, like I had butt and hips a little early, and that I already felt extremely different. And so like that, but really I think my depression was extremely existential. I read the Bible like cover to cover around that time. And I was like, well, this is not, this is a raw deal for women and like a lot of people in the Bible. And like, I think there was just like a lot of otherness, a lot of this world is very bad. And I was, there were familial chaos. I think that was probably at the foundation for me. But yeah,
what was the otherness from being non-white or?
Yeah, non-white in Portland, Oregon, where I came up, and actually Clackamas, Oregon is where I was raised. And it wasn't, I think it's more of being like mixed race, because there were a lot of Asian kids at my school, but being sort of between, being kind of fat. Like I wasn't fat, like capital F. She was chubby. She felt she was experiencing weight stigma. I speak, of course, of my 11-year-old self. She, the person outside of myself, inner child work. A little chubby, different, smart, divorced parents. Maybe like I was just kind of like liberal. Also, like I was just had a feminist chip on my shoulder. Where I grew up was kind of conservative. This like suburb I grew up in. So that my parents were working class, where everybody else's parents were kind of rich, like. More like dentistry, and my mom was a hairstylist, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that existential thing too, all three of my kids really went through that very hard. Like that was kind of the age where I think you sort of really grapple with the idea of like you sort of all of a sudden go like, oh, we all die. Like kids do it around 5, but then they do it again around 11, where they're like, oh, fuck. For reals.
Maybe if you're lucky, you get existential at that. But some kids with shitty parents or like boring, controlling people, they don't go through it till they're 25,
Oh, yeah.
They don't start thinking about themselves. So kudos to you. And, I don't think my parents were really as thoughtful about it, but kudos to my parents for having a little zazz, having a little extra stuff going on to make me such a good artist.
I think that with my kids, I feel like they had just the right amount of trauma. They're very funny, interesting people, but they didn't have like, I don't think they had a lot of capital T trauma. They just had a lot of like divorced parents, dad not around a lot, mom with depression and some mental illness stuff, but who was still super involved,
You have like a fascinating career for a mom, I think. And I think that is got to be a source of joy. I mean, as it is for your audience, to your
they
children.
are not interested in it. It's actually like it's such a funny thing, because like people are always like, I bet your kids think that's really cool. I'm like, they do not. They just are so like, ugh. The only time they ever comment on it was their cousin, my nephew, who's very, very funny also, he was driving the two big boys around, and he kept putting on my labia joke in the car, and he would make them listen all the way through, and they were like yelling, and they were like, oh my God, this is so gross. So
they may not think it's cool now, but you know what? When those fools are like, have a couple of clicks on the old odometer, like they're gonna have some perspective, because they don't know it's cool, because they don't know what it's like to have a mom who, I don't know, works at Chase Bank.
Yeah.
Not that you can't work at Chase Bank and be like fun, a really interesting person, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think eventually they'll kind of be like, oh, and I think even now, like we'll be talking, and he'll be like, was that the time we went to Atlanta and we were watching that show be filmed and
so
blah, blah,
cool.
blah, blah, blah. And I got to hang out with and I'm like, yeah. Which is a rare experience, my man.
Yeah, and your kids were on Doug Loves Movies.
Which they are so not impressed with. One time Doug was like, would your kids want to come back on? And I was like, I'll ask them. And they were like, no, thanks. And I was like, they said no. They're not into it. They were.
Yeah, my kids are offer only on podcasts now.
Apparently, so. Yeah. They will get in touch with you.
Hilarious.
So your parents, were they religious? Were you raised religious at all? Because like, I know you do the tarot readings. You do a lot of that stuff now. But was that a part of your childhood?
Yes, but I was raised Catholic, but not very strictly, because my dad was like pretty secular. My mom was like converted Catholic, which is always weird, but I think it's just like her friends are doing it. So her best friend was my godmother, and she kind of made me, do First Communion and do a little bit of Catholic stuff. My favorite part of being Catholic is the pomp in the circle, the robes and the Latin and the incense. It's all very witchy. So it felt extremely natural to also burn incense in my own practice of like one-to-one spirituality. Because as I said, she's a Pisces, she's a spiritual kid, and the Bible wasn't really hitting. And so I kind of started developing my own spirituality at that time, and it was tarot cards really called to me. So I just like scooped them up at Borders. I hid them away, and then I started kind of playing with them, and it wasn't really till my 20s that I developed a tarot practice, but now I am studying the tarot, and it is extremely academic, and there is scientific basis for tarot to be a tool of personal development and understanding. Is this good for a comedy podcast?
Oh no, this is not a comedy podcast. This is a death podcast. So
Perfect.
No, it's perfect. And actually, I draw a card on the full moon and the new moon always.
Oh, how nice!
And I was raised by witches and hippies and lesbians, and so like there was a lot of that stuff in my childhood. And for a while as an adult, I like really veered far away from it, and had like a chip on my shoulder, and went very like. And I think partly because I was a very superstitious child, and I'm already a very anxious person, and I feel like superstition added all these layers to that to me. Like, I'm already terrified of dying all the time. I don't need to add being afraid of loose mirrors, breaking to that. So I got away from it. But then 4 years ago, when I kind of got back into spirituality and was like really trying to develop a practice, I found that, like you said, it's a really helpful tool for me to pull a card on the new moon and be like, this is the behavior I want to build. And on the full moon to pull a card and be like, this is some stuff I want to let go of. And to just kind of continue to do, like on the full moon, I'll be like, this is, my work to let go of. I do a shadow work, like you said, like a letting go of card. And then I'll pull a card that's like, this is your abundance. This is the stuff that you got to have this month. And then for new moon, I do like, this is what you need to focus on. And like you said, it's not that I'm like, this is my future, this is my fortune. It's just like, it's helpful to me to be like, what can I focus on?
It's kind of like, if you're in the Dungeons and Dragons community, you have a 30-sided die, and that's like the thing that's driving the story that you create forward. And to me, that's what a tarot deck is. It's like there's, 56 major arcana or 64. I don't know. I'm not great with numbers. I'm great with ideas and words. So yeah, there's a lot of the cards, and you pull one and it is a picture. It's like, it's like if you rolled the dice and got a number, it's a picture and it's an archetype. And it's like the archetype is like loneliness or running from your past or not being able to sleep at night, like very like archetypes that you would understand instantly. For those of you who've never seen a tarot deck before, you think they're spooky or satanic. They're absolutely not. And a lot of the the suits, you got your wands, swords, cups, pentacles, those are just elemental. They're just air, earth, sky, water. Anyway, sky, that's a Captain Planet. It's air in tarot. But it's swords. Anyway, it's all very all meant to direct you and your inner guides to what you need to see and know. And like any kind of tool, be it journaling or talking to a friend or whatever, it's just, it's something to orient your insides.
Yeah, I think I realized after, for a year I did a lot of, ritual building, trying to like you said, burning incense and sitting and meditating and doing a lot of things. And when I finally had done for a few years, a lot of it, I was like, oh, all I'm doing is making it easier to hear my intuition.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah. And I would sit, and now like when I pull a card, I'll pull a card and then sit and meditate for 10, 20 minutes or whatever. And then that way it's kind of like, it kind of gives me like a little like, okay, well, this card represents, a new beginning. And it'll kind of help me like develop something that I was already trying to tell myself a lot of times. Cool. Something like today when I pulled that card and then I sat and meditated for like 20 minutes, and I had been super grumpy all morning and was just like in a really weird bad mood for no reason. And when I pulled that card and then I was sat and meditated, and the word that kept popping into my head is unlearning. And I realized that a lot of these practices I have, like yoga or writing or whatever, I have a lot of unlearning to do around the fact that I feel like I should do those things instead of enjoying them, and like feeling guilty if I don't do them, or feeling like, this is a routine, you stick to it, instead of just being like, no, you do those things because they can be very pleasant,
or being called to them.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. So that I really love that you do the tarot reading in your show, because I feel like a lot of people are really intimidated by it. They think that it's something more, like that if you get the tower. I think that for me, that was one reason as a child, I was so afraid. Like if you get the tower, you know, which has this burning building in a lot of decks, this burning building with people falling out of it. And I would be like shaky, like afterward. And I would feel so afraid of ruin. But now that I've had ruin a few times in my life, I'm like, ruin can be great.
Oh, it's
actually
wonderful. Yes, we welcome ruin. I think that if anybody is starting with tarot, a great principle to kind of hold that, well, any kind of really spiritual practice or any kind of like witchiness or divination is yin and yang, right? And that idea that anything that you're meant to look at the opposite as well. And that's just about, I don't know, maybe that's some Asian stuff coming through, right? But it's also just, you know, balance is definitely part of how I grew up. That was the other part of my spirituality, is that I was raised by an old Korean American woman who was raised in Hawaii by, you know, Korean immigrants who were Shinto. And that shit's just about energy and luck. Like, it's just about cleaning your house, and hanging certain things in certain places and being lucky, you know. It's, which I like also. Like, I do think that there's energy of everyday objects and people. What was I talking about? Oh, the yin and yang of the tarot. Yeah. So when you're looking at the tarot, that like the tower, and that's another thing, you can be like an advanced tarot card reader and then start looking at reverses of cards, looking at doing a spread of cards. So it's not just one card being pulled. So it's like, you know, and it's however complex your issue is, you know, you can open yourself up to more information. And yeah.
Yeah. I love the idea of balance, because I feel like I definitely was raised without that. I was raised by very fearful people, and like sort of, I think it only until like recently did I realize like it's okay if bad things happen. Like I spent most of my life being so petrified of any bad thing happening. Yeah. And it's only like, honestly, like in the last year, after some personal loss, I'm getting sick and stuff, that I've kind of been like, I see. Thickens the plot, as the Buddhists say, you know, like that's, you know, and I think I've started to realize like that's that balance, is when I used to be so terrified of getting like the death card or, you know, the tower, is because I had been raised to be so afraid of loss and to just avoid loss at all costs. But like doing that made me hold on to a lot of things in my life that were not right for me, you know, and that were harming me, because I just was so afraid of ever ending anything or ever having an ending or going through grief. I don't think I was ever taught as a child how to functionally deal with grief, you know? Or even disgust. Like we didn't even discuss grief. It was just like, well, let's keep it tidy.
I just thought of a good example of the yin and yang, because so today is, I don't know when this is going to be released, but do you mind if I say when it's being recorded?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay. It's the Leo full moon tonight.
Yeah.
And Leo is, you know, I always think of Leo the lion, the king. He's the king of the jungle, and he's a little king, and it's his world, and you're just living in it, sister. And so, you know, the Leo full moon, I heard one of my favorite astrologers is Queer Cosmos on Instagram, and he said today that it's Leo full moon is about unexpressed glories. So what unexpressed glories? And so if you think of the king, you know, like, you know, the king is glory, but like, if you are the greatest king, you must be like very self-conscious about your decrees and the things that you're putting out there, because what if they don't live up to your kingly reputation? What if the fall from the tower is high, the fall from the what is it called when you put something on a pedestal? Yep, a pedestal. When you fall from the pedestal, the fall is great, you know, when you're a king and you think so much of yourself. So yeah, for me, this Leo full moon, without going into it, has been about like humility, you know? And so like that's sort of the, you know, thinking about things in this like mystical world that I live in, it's all about like, yeah, looking at both sides of it. So for Leo, pride and humility. Aquarius,
I love that.
You know, it's Aquarius season right now, so it's all about like being like, you know, looking forward, but also like looking at what why you need to look forward, looking at the groundedness, so like air, earth and air. And
I love that. My partner now is a Leo, and I love a Leo. Like, he is exactly that description of like genuinely the most confident person I've ever met. Like, just does not worry about things, is not afraid of things, is not worried. Like when you're like, well, what if you get rejected? He's like, what? Not afraid of that. Yeah. But also at the same time, it's partly because he so carefully weighs everything that he does. Mm-hmm. And he's so careful about his integrity and his virtue, and everything he does is so carefully built around making sure, not in an anxious way, which is the way I do it, but in more like a very like a moral way. And that's kind of part of like, he's also very, I don't know, like you were talking about Shintoism and luck. He's a very lucky person. And I think a lot of that is just that he moves through life with this like energy of like, it'll work out. And then it does, And
then also you build a belief that you're lucky, and then you attract luck, which I'm totally with that. That's amazing. I think that it's all about aspects, because like I've known Leos where they're not the eldest child, they're like the youngest child. And then think about like, the tiny king that gets like crapped on all the time. So like they have like a different kind of more tentative rulership, so like they're the boss of this room, but they're also kind of on guard. And maybe they rule in kind of like a little finger, like behind the king kind of way,
Yeah.
It's all about kind of, well, I think sibling order, birth order might be as important as astrology.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's culture. It's like nurture, so you got to look at all those things. That's what you got to ask on the first dates,
Oh yeah. What's your sign and what birth order are you? I think is absolutely. Well, and that's such a funny, like just yesterday, a friend of mine we were discussing, I don't know if you watched the show, Escape to the Chateau. It's a delight. It's a lovely British couple that buys a French chateau for $300,000 and they're fixing it up. But anyway, the woman.
I'm all the way in.
Yeah, no, you will love it. And my mom told me to watch it and I was ready to poo-poo it. And now we're obsessed. We can't stop watching it. But I said of the woman, she's got big sister energy. I can already tell she has a little brother she's been bossing around her whole life. I can tell. And then later they showed the brother and I was like, nailed it, knew it. Big sister energy right there, And
absolutely.
then I say that my boys are brothers because had they had a sister, they would have been more civilized, I think. Like a girl thrown in the mix would have definitely like really changed. Yeah. And I know people don't always agree with the gender things, but come hang out with my kids and tell me a young lady wouldn't have definitely changed matters in this house. Like there's so much just wiener energy in this house. Yeah. Just constant
my poor
smacking
brother
and slapping.
Is fully a sister brother.
I love a sister brother.
I wish he had more outlets for for unbridled masculinity. Because not only are we like sisters, we are like really intense, like feminists and like very critical of toxic masculinity. And so it was like, he didn't have a chance. He never had a chance.
My brother is the youngest. There were 4 of us girls growing up, and then he's the youngest. And that's the same. He never had a chance. Like, he's a very quiet man. He's a very quiet man. And I think for a while he rebelled. He went through this like real redneck phase. And then we were like, what are you doing? And he was like, oh, fine. But he's also very progressive, super feminist, but yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Like he must have just, what a thing. And just from growing up with 4 girls, we were like, we fought, but not the way my sons do, not in like this very physical.
Oh yeah.
Like I'll be like, oh my God, you guys are hurting each other. Like we were like, you're stupid and I stole your pants, like that's how we fought.
Yeah.
So we were sisters for sure. Well, I love all those answers. Those are so beautiful. And it sounds like, so you went through this depression at 11.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, and you had this big existential crisis. I'm wondering, like, how did you deal with sort of death as a kid? And then how do you deal with it now? Because you were Catholic as a kid. So did you believe in heaven?
What's so funny, Emma? Oh, man, I don't really think about afterlife very often. So part of it, there's a huge tension in my life of known and unknown. And I think of it as yin and yang also, like in balance. I just if something is not known, I just don't care. I just don't care. It's not that I don't stress about the mystery. And I think that's one part of being like kind of a spiritual person is like, I'm not really stressed about the mystery because I'm in touch with, like I'm not stressed about the void because I'm in touch with what fills the void. Do you know what I mean?
That. Yeah.
And if you have your channels open to like receiving, like I'm not worried about that ending when my life is over, if that's a way to put it, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't think about corporeal life being over very often. I am absolutely, okay. This is a hot take that is perfect for this podcast and almost nowhere else. I do not fuck with ghosts. Ghosts are not welcome in my house or life. They know. They must know. I don't have energy. Here's a little stand-up comedy premise, but like that I only say during the Halloween holiday, which is that ghosts are these like whatever, house guests that have unfinished business that puts that shit on you. That's just a toxic person.
Yeah, that's just rude.
It's rude. It's toxic, and I'm not your emotional dumping ground, you ghosts. So I'm not doing your emotional labor, you ghosts. So that's how I feel about, sort of the ooky spooky afterlife stuff. I am so I'm watching the after death or the near death experience show on Netflix. Are you watching that?
No, I have it in my queue. I was going to watch it. It looked interesting.
Like appropriate. And that's the kind of thing that I think for a long time. So in the like 1800s, there was spiritualism is what it was called, right? And that was people like holding seances. And this show really goes into that. And I think that like spiritualism really kind of gave witches a bad name, and it kind of like became, I don't know. I'm not really, I don't know a lot about those 1800s guys like Aleister Crowley and those like, magic guys. Unfortunately, they've given witchcraft kind of like a yucky name, I think. But I don't know too much about it. All I know is that people freak out a little bit. So, but spiritualism was, this popular thing in Europe, and it was popular in the United States, and it was seances, and that near death documentary goes into it a little bit. But because there are these like physical, it was kind of like also like a magic trick. Like they'd tie the person up in a box so that, you could prove that something was actually happening in the room. And, it's just kind of like David Copperfield, like, So it bums me out because I think for a lot of people, the only way that they're willing to acknowledge an invisible world is through a direct experience with their dead ancestors. Yeah. And frankly, there's better people on the other side, or like there's better energy IMO, like there's not better, but different. Less connected to you. But I don't know why I feel that way. I don't know. What do you think
you're
about
the
that?
first person to bring up ghosts on the podcast, and I love it. Yeah, I know. Isn't that wild? You're the first person. And I love that because I simultaneously don't believe in ghosts, but would never say Bloody Mary in a mirror 3 times. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, that's just, whatever they tell you not to do, I'm probably not going to do it. So, but when Calvin and I used to watch a lot of scary movies together, and I would get really scared at the ghost. Specifically, nothing else really scares me. I'm not scared of like slasher films. Like, yeah, we know men murder women. I'm aware of it, you know?
Right.
Like that's a thing that's constantly happening. And like a lot of the stuff doesn't scare me, but the ghost stuff scares me until you show the ghost. And then I'm like, oh, okay, it's fine. It's just a ghost. It's just a ghost. Like until you know what it is, I'm terrified. But Calvin was never scared of any of that, even when he was like younger. And one time I asked him, like, aren't you scared of, like, don't ghosts scare you? And he was like, they're just sad dead people. And I was like, oh yeah, they're not like terrifying. If there is such a thing as ghosts, they're just like leftover people who are refusing to let go of life, who are just like, like old girl. They're like old boyfriends who keep texting you, and you're like, leave me alone.
They're baggage, it's just baggage from beyond. Yeah, and I don't think that you're a person anymore, so I'm not scared of it in the same, like, when you're hiking and you're like, human, like that's very scary.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think of even a ghost as a human. Like, I don't think there's a person in my house or what, and again, I feel like because I have zero tolerance for ghost stuff, no one has ever approached me but I do feel like the presence of my ancestors sometimes, not in a corporeal way, not in a vapor way, not in a cupboard open way. I feel purely in a spiritual way. In the back, my brain stem, I feel like is connected, directly to, the creator and all the best energy and my, departed, the energies of my departed loved ones and the goddess Kali and Diana and, not maybe as literally as other people would pray to a saint or something like that. But yeah, I'm trying to use my brainstem to invoke the energies that I want when I want and need them. And it's working pretty good.
I really love that. I think I saw one time this wonderful kind of shaman woman I follow on Instagram. She was talking about how she was kind of teasing white people, and totally correctly so, because she was making fun of a white girl who had on her altar had all these different gods and goddesses, and she was like, how are you going to pray to this many people? She was like, pray to your ancestors, don't pray to all these people. And I thought that was very funny, because I think, as somebody who was raised without something, you do end up sort of appropriating and just sort of picking and choosing what you like from different things. And she was gently teasing about that, but she was like, your energy's all over the place. You can't be praying to Kali and so-and-so at the same time. But Kali was one that, when I first started to practice, somebody had bought me a little painting and a little shrine, and I just something about it just really hit home with me. I think, maybe just from years of growing up in the patriarchy, and it's just a powerful feminine figure on a pile of skulls was really what I needed at the time,
Yeah, there's not a lot of women destroyers in our culture. So that, and that's, that's social, political, cultural stuff. And I think that is, that's our imperfect human minds that kind of are looking for symbols to combat layers of culture that have nothing to do with, maybe our actual spiritual needs, but probably our social, cultural needs that are wounded. And certainly having a female, a divine female destroyer is a remedy for Western culture's, terror, reign of terror on women. And even, and it comes from the East. Kali is an Indian deity. And yeah, I love her. She showed up in my 20s. And it's just when I need a bit of savagery, I always remember her. And now it's so funny. I think of Megan Thee Stallion as being the pop cultural amalgamation. Tongue out, savage. It's right there,
Yeah. Absolutely. And I felt for me too, it sort of embodied this different non-Western view of motherhood, instead of it being, gentle and placid, and also sort of you're fully dedicated to your child, instead of it being no, it's blood and shit. And
blood
death.
And shit, yeah, and death, and that's the yin and yang of Kali is really obvious. It's birth and death, and that's it's right there.
I love it. Well, we've done this good. I said we had to kind of wrap this up in an hour, so we're doing great. I'm going to ask you one more question. So I ask everybody the same 3 questions, and then I have a 4th question, which is just for this person, which is so funny because you had brought up earlier, you were talking about luck, And my question for you was kind of based around that. Is on the full moon, I always do this little, on the new moon and the full moon, I always do this little prayer where I say either new moon or full moon, whatever it is. But then I always think to myself, trust your luck, it's coming soon. And it's just something that like I've been saying to myself since I was a kid. So I'll be like, okay, it's the new moon, trust your luck, it's coming soon. And I kind of started saying it to myself because I was so superstitious as a kid. I started trying to be like, good or bad, trust your luck. You know, like sometimes some things have happened to me and I've been like, oh, that was so unlucky. And then later I'm like, oh, turns out that was exactly the thing that needed to happen. And it was actually very lucky. So I was just going to ask, like, what do you got coming for you? What do you think? What's your luck?
Ooh, what's coming for old Bri Pruett, huh?
Yeah, you said, in Shinto, you're trying to like build that sort of, I don't know, bridge to your luck. So what do you got?
Oh, Emma, thank you for asking this. I feel a bit lacking in energy in this area right now, but what should be coming? Well, $30,000 are coming to me. Did you know this?
I didn't, but I'm excited for you.
$30,000, it's coming. So I've been saying that number a lot, and also it's just I don't know why. Here's the like incantation. It's with for the good of all and harm to none. $30,000 is on its way to me.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anybody wants to try some witchcraft, that is an incantation that you can use that I got from my high priestess co-hosts. So $30,000, a writing. Do you want me to just say things that I want that are coming? Okay.
I think it's been hard for 4 years to feel hopeful. And this year especially, I think it's been hard to wish for good luck. We've all just been hoping nobody we love dies and that Trump is out of office. And like, for me, when people were like, what are your 2021 resolutions? I'm like, I just want everybody in my family to live. That's all I care about. But
that's very nice.
We have some like light at the end of the tunnel. So yeah, I think it's important to like articulate hope now.
I think it's beautiful to articulate hope. I think like I'm going to get, some jobs, some creative jobs. I really would love for this Hollywood Dream Factory to change the no thank yous to yes ma'am. I'm gonna get some yes ma'ams from the Dream Factory. And $30,000. Definitely going to continue to shepherd my herd as you have modeled for me. And actually, what I see for myself is all the work that I have been doing is going to be multiplied by 10 with effort, just by me doing it. So any little ripple will be like this huge wave.
I think that's true. I think that is something I've figured out. Like it's cumulative. I think it can feel like when you're journaling, when you're drawing cards, when you're doing it, it feels very day to day. But the result is like it's cumulative, and you keep seeing that.
I was referring to my comedy career, but yes, also internally in my internal work, that will also happen.
Well, that too, comedy, I felt right before COVID hit, I had been kind of like, I'd been sick and stuff. And I was like, I got to take probably like a year off comedy. And I was, timing wise for me, worked out really well. Amazing. Sorry, everybody else, but I was already planning to take some time off. And because I had put in, a decade of work, I had a fan base who supported me, and I had albums that supported me, and like all this stuff. And also like, I think I thought in the beginning, like, oh wow, everything's going to go away, but it didn't, because it's like, you put the legs in, you are still the beloved queen of warm-hearted truthiness, whether or not
true, I am.
You are. Well, Bri, you're such a delight, and we're going to do your podcast next, so people get to listen to double doses of us. Real quick, plug all your stuff. Where can people find you, and where can they buy stuff from you?
Yeah, I'm Bri Pruett across platforms. It's Bri with an I, Pruett with an ETT, and I have a podcast called You Can Do It with Bri Pruett. It is a pep talk podcast, and I invite comedians and performers on to build them up. You can listen to it wherever you listen to podcasts. I have nothing for sale right now, but that will change soon. So please follow me on the platforms because, as I said, the Patreon is about to burst.
It's about to
with
explode.
Abundance, just a cornucopia of content. What kind of content you want? Probably none. Probably you just want to give me money like Sweet Emma. But I'm.
What's your Venmo? I always ask for people's Venmo. Yeah,
it's Bri Pruett.
Okay.
Yeah, that's nice.
Somebody send Bri $30,000. She has earned it.
Alexander.
Alexander.
Alexander, you get me part of the way there. No, honey, you're doing fine.
You're doing
you support.
good.
Yeah.
He, I'm sure he already follows you because he has the best taste in comedy of anybody I've ever met. So I'm sure he already knows who you are and follows you because
I'm pretty quiet on social media these days, but the podcast is every Wednesday, so that's been my little outlet in the Pando. And yeah, I'll be back out on the stages. I'll be beating the boards.
Yeah,
sometime soon.
And you're gonna get that $30,000 in a show or shows, who knows? And well, thank you, Bri. This has been so much fun. Thank you guys for listening. And be sure to subscribe to the Patreon of Bri's when she does make it. All right, bye.